everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Thelma Young Lieutenant Tambua, and I'm with the Solutions Project. Today, we're going to be having a really important conversation about what communities can do to protect themselves in the face of extreme weather. This conversation is a part of a longer campaign that's happening right now called Stronger Together, Solidarity Summer, hashtag Solidarity Strong. And we really want to remind people that even though the climate crisis is supercharging extreme weather, we have power to protect each other, keep each other safe, and, continue to take action, and that we are not powerless. So we're going to be joined by some incredible climate organizers from Texas. I'm Texan. I grew up in Texas. I grew up in Houston. And so this means a lot to me, but we're also focusing on Texas. One, because they've been dealing with a lot. The floods in central Texas this summer hit communities really, really hard. But there's also a lot of knowledge in Texas. They've been through so many hurricanes and floods and other events. So there's a lot of deep wisdom, especially from frontline communities, about what you can do. We are facing a new era in the US. FEMA's being gutted, NOAA's being gutted. And so I'm going to be joined really soon by these amazing organizers who can tell us that, we can still take power, we can still take action to protect our communities. I'm going to start welcoming in board. Let me see it. Bear with me as I bring in all of our incredible guests. All right, give us a moment as we bring in all our amazing guests. Hello. I should say howdy, y'all. How's it going?
Howdy, doing well.
Let's
Hi,
see.
Thelma. It's good to see you.
Hello. Good to see you too, Carmen. We're just waiting on Alice to join us from West Street Recovery, and then we're just going to kick off. Let's see. How's it looking on your end? Is Alice coming up on your screen?
I see a turning circle in
Okay.
progress.
She's
We're
coming.
getting
She's coming.
loaded.
We're getting loaded. Maybe we'll just kick things off. And if y'all want to introduce yourselves and which organization you're with and where you're coming in from right now. Carmen, do you wanna start us off?
Sure. Hey, y'all. It's great to see you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm Carmen Llanes, or Carmen Llanes, here in Austin, Texas, in Central Texas. And I'm with Go Austin, Vamos Austin. We're community organizers, organizing constantly for healthier neighborhoods, including and especially in these times of climate shocks and stressors.
Hey y'all, my name is Andy Escobar. I use he and they pronouns interchangeably. I'm coming at y'all live from Houston, Texas. I'm the campaigns manager for an organization called SEER, which stands for Coalition for Environment, Equity, and Resilience. We were a coalition that was founded after Hurricane Harvey to break down the silos across the environmental movement, labor movement, and all of the other social and civil rights causes within our community, because we understand that they're interconnected. And so we advocate for making the connections between pollution, place, and public health. And that's what's really important to us.
Amazing. It looks like Alice from West Street Recovery is working to connect her signal, but we're so glad to have you. Hello, Alice made it. Welcome,
Sorry about
welcome,
that.
Alice. All good. Sorry to put you on the spot, Alice. Would you mind introducing yourself and where you are right now?
Yes, my name is Alice. I am one of the co-directors of West Street Recovery, and I am also in Houston, Texas with Andy.
Awesome. So I'm so glad that y'all could come together today for this conversation. And I think it's something that a lot of people are thinking about right now, especially this summer. We've seen extreme weather hit so many communities in the US and around the world. The climate crisis, fueled by the fossil fuel industry, is supercharging our weather, and it's really having such a devastating impact on so many lives. And on top of that, our federal government is gutting NOAA, gutting FEMA, gutting all these federal resources. And so we're really entering this really kind of scary period of we're going into this wilderness of what does this mean for communities. And I know that all three of you have really been through this work, have a lot of deep thoughts. And so I'm excited to hopefully have this conversation, hear some of y'all's wisdom that you can share to inspire other communities who want to step up and take action as well. So my first question for you is if you can just talk about what is an extreme weather event that your community has been through and what is something that you did before or after to kind of help with the recovery. Whichever one of you wants to kick us off.
I'm happy to start.
Thanks,
And I can back up and just say, GAVA actually began as a childhood obesity intervention, a place-based intervention that a funder in Central Texas catalyzed and has since transformed, I guess you could say been taken over by local community organizers and transformed into, we still work on access to healthy food and physical activity, but we really started organizing around the social determinants of health. And what I learned as a young organizer from incredible elders in the environmental justice movement as health being connected to where we live, work, learn, play, worship, and looking at the intersections of all the issues that impact how we're able to get by and have a healthy life, right? And so in GAVA's early years, we had really amazing victories in improving the infrastructure, getting better playgrounds, getting better healthy food sources in schools, in retail areas, and community access points. And in those same first 5 years, our Southeast Austin communities in Lower Onion Creek were devastated by 2 catastrophic floods in 2013 and 2015. We were not an organization working on floods or climate resilience at that time at all. Some of us, weren't even in the organization yet, but those of us who were, we were like many communities in these, after these recent floods, after wildfires in other places, whatever disaster, that community is the first response, right? So as organizers, we started learning from those experiences. And in 2018, we found out about Atlas 14, which for Texas and particularly the I-10 corridor, which includes Austin and Houston, it's a complete change. It's an update to our flood modeling data, which is from the 1990s. So we realized that our floodplains, the 500-year is now the 100-year floodplain, the 100 is now the 25, and so on. And so we knew it just wasn't ethical to keep doing what we were doing without addressing these issues. And we started applying that methodology of organizing, that we got better playgrounds and better food sources, to getting better drainage infrastructure, better disaster preparedness, preparing at home and in the neighborhood, and also knowing those institutional folks so we can have a better response each time. And we've seen that in each disaster get a little better and get us a little bit more room to push for the real systemic pieces around infrastructure equity, pollution, contamination, right? All of those other intersecting issues that affect us. And we've been, a big part of what does resilience look like? What do resilience hubs look like? Where does response and responsibility begin and end? At the institutional level, at the community level, right? Our cities our municipal governments aren't prepared to respond to us the way community has to respond, but they do have significant responsibilities for critical infrastructure, for historic inequities, for increased risk, et cetera. And so we've really been trying to be less crisis response, although we all have to be prepared for crises now, and more about improving the process and fighting for those equitable changes across the board so that we are more prepared in floods, fires, storms. We've got it all now, right? So that's a couple examples for us how it's gone.
Awesome. Alice or Andy, do you want to talk about Houston?
I'll let Alice kick us off.
So in Houston, we really experience the whole gamut of disasters in a similar way as Carmen is saying for Central Texas and Austin. Westry recovery started after Hurricane Harvey in 2017. And as we've seen in many other cities, including New Orleans, including Austin, it's really this sort of initial devastation of an unprecedented disaster in terms of lives lost, in terms of infrastructure damage, that really kicked off what has been since then 8 years of community organizing and actually building power in the neighbors of Houston that have been most devastated. So flooding and hurricanes is a major disaster that we see in Houston, including Hurricane Beryl last summer, which even despite being just a Category 1 hurricane, knocked out power for hundreds of thousands of homes in Houston for multiple weeks. So we see in Houston, as Carmen is pointing to, what should be a disaster that we are prepared for and that we need to be prepared for, is much more devastating than it should be because of the total failure of infrastructure and lack of climate resilience, lack of government investment in these life-saving systems and infrastructure, including our privatized electricity grid, including our totally outdated flood mitigation infrastructure, and including our disaster response system from the government. And so what Westry Recovery and other community organizations in Houston have been doing to prepare, we've been really trying to address the lack of resilient alternative power systems, because whether it's a winter storm or a heat wave or a hurricane, power outages and extended power outages have been one of the deadliest impacts across all these different types of disasters. So we've set up multiple resilience hubs in Northeast Houston as well that are all equipped with backup solar panels and batteries. And a really big area of focus as well is the social infrastructure. Like, how can we get neighbors to actually be communicating with each other and mapping out community resources before the disaster actually hits, so that when the storm comes in, people are ready to really be boots on the ground and hit the ground running. And yeah, there's a lot more to say, but I'll pass it to Andy.
Yeah, and I want to give a really big shout out to both Carmen and Alice. They're doing really incredible work, great partners of ours. And West Street's one of the members of SEER, of our coalition. And Storm Uri that happened in 2021. That was a really big impact for us that, you know, as Texans, right, we're used to the heat and the hot weather. We weren't ready for that type of freeze. And our grid really suffered through it. And it was a really big wake up call for a lot of Texans, particularly around how we don't necessarily feel safe in our homes, right? When the power goes out, a lot of people's homes aren't up to standards in terms of like weatherization and safety, so that their homes don't get too cold or too hot, and the opposite, right, for extreme heat. And I know that we've been pretty lucky this summer with only having a few days over 100 degrees, but last summer we had so many days that were 100 degrees or more. And extreme heat is a really, really big issue for us here in Texas. And it's something that we're learning about and trying to share more information about how to be resilient. And one of those things is complementary to the hub homes that West Street's leading on, is having some larger spaces, some resilient centers where large scale safety and resilience can happen, where folks can go when disasters do hit. But like we know, right, the grid is not reliable. So we want to utilize, right, renewable solar energy and a battery, so that that is an option for folks to go and seek refuge there, charge up their materials, and, get a little bit of safety, and having multiple versions of those centers. So that's something that we're really thinking about as well.
Awesome. Things are definitely getting scarier and scarier. And what advice would you have for someone who's watching this video? They see what's happening, they're maybe experiencing it themselves. What advice would you have for people how to not feel powerless in the face of climate disasters? What can they start doing today with their community? Whoever wants to answer that.
Well, I'm happy to jump in. I think, first of all, if the skies are clear and you're not in immediate danger and things are, relatively okay, talk to each other. start talking to your neighbors. If you live in an apartment complex, start greeting people, start hosting a clothing swap or sharing a dish with someone, start learning people's kids' names or pet names or what kind of plant they grow outside. If you live in a rural place, start finding where people convene and gather, social gatherings, because the relationship building is really what is critical. I mean, right now, there are so many people in serious need, not just from these extreme disasters, but also just from the intense pressures people are facing. You know, massive job loss, huge imposed legal problems, and families being torn apart. You know, there's all kinds of things, shocks and stressors. And what I'm seeing is some of the most incredible, efficient mutual aid, some of the most inspiring, rapid resource moving fundraising, but also just even bartering or services is happening where people have been connected. It's those people who, like, they're supporting their neighbor because that neighbor has been somebody who's shown up in spaces and they know people. And so it's moving. I always like to quote, one of my teachers is Ron Chisholm of the People's Institute for Survival and Beyond in New Orleans, who says we're moving from a dependency model to an independency model to an interdependency model. We really can't do this without each other. But if you are, you know, if you have had those shocks, like let's say your power went out for 3 days, one day it could be for 3 weeks. So what did you learn in that power outage? Even for me, somebody who works with an organization who helped create, you know, a neighborhood disaster preparedness manual and, you know, checklists for how to have your go bag, I went, oh my goodness, are my battery packs full? You know, and my dad, who has been like living with very limited resources for a long time, saved up to have a solar generator. And that solar generator was the reason in Winter Storm Uri, when I could not get to my father, that I knew he at least had connectivity. It was neighbors who got him water. It was neighbors who checked in, you know, but same thing when our power went out in the last hailstorm, because now these things are happening on a quarterly basis, it seems like. That solar generator saved us. So, you know, there's little things that we can do to prepare ourselves, but it's never been a better time. If you're an introvert, just put that extra effort to at least ask names. And if you're an extrovert, put those interactions to work in building that network that in times of crisis is going to give you so much more agency to make things better.
Yeah, definitely the relationships are at the core of every feasible disaster resilience model. And just something at the very practical level is staging resources and supplies as locally as possible. We really try to think about all of the different scales of disaster response and preparedness. And like here in Houston, our local government really focuses on the individual and the household scale, making sure that we have those plans. But how, you know, obviously when the floodwaters come, when the storm hits, that's not happening at the household level. At the minimum, it's happening at the street and the neighborhood level. So when we think about this sort of hyper local preparedness and response, we really try to think about it at the level of a street, trying to make sure that your street, your immediate neighbors know which house has the generator, which house has the pickup truck, which house has a chainsaw to cut down trees when they fall down. After major disasters in Houston, we've really seen an influx of supplies and resources that accumulate in downtown, but because there's a lack of roads, there's a lack of reliable transportation, people's cars get flooded, there's no way to get those supplies actually out beyond the center of the city. So having those supplies and resources staged as hyper locally as possible is really important. And then on a sort of different scale as well, Telma, as you're saying, like our government at all levels is really under attack, is being taken apart. And in states such as Texas, where a lot of people are used to sort of libertarian ethos of government. I think it's really important for organizers to be educating people on not conceding the responsibility of the state, not conceding the responsibility of the government, and keeping our eye on these big picture predatory systems that really use disasters to further privatize the land, the water, the air, to further accumulate and concentrate capital and displace people. And so really understanding these like power systems that are at play after disaster is really important for being able to come together to resist that further concentration of power.
Yeah. I think it's a perfect segue because I also want to bring in Andy because it's even though the federal government is stripping so many things, there's a lot that we can do with our local governments as well. So Andy, do you actually want to talk about the Climate Justice Action Plan that y'all put together with Harris County?
Absolutely. We have to acknowledge that there's been decades of strategic energy and resources put into, the dismantling of our democratic systems and, the division of our communities and sowing hatred, right? And so in Houston, Harris County, we've been really kind of building a foundation for a more democratic county since 2018. And for the first time, people know that the county government exists, that it's there to serve them, that there are services available, right? And one of those things that we're really proud of that SEER collaborated on with Harris County on was the cultivation of a Harris County Climate Justice Plan. And initially, they actually adopted an internal climate plan to really focus on like the ins and outs of the government and how they can do things more internally. But they also knew that we have to do more stuff for the people. And we worked together for 2 years from the ground up, cultivating people's values and their ideas into a framework. And so we produced this plan that has 5 themes, which revolve around culture, community, economy, ecology, and infrastructure. And it's just a really robust way for us to look at how we can transform ourselves, our systems, our way of life as well, for a brighter future. And I think that that is a way for us to not feel hopeless. I really think that environmental and climate justice work is a light in this darkness. There's something really beautiful that happens when people come together and feel reconnected to the natural world, and feel reconnected to each other, and recognize that we are in this all together and that it takes a collaborative effort. And, we recognize that the county alone can't do it. And so we know that it's going to take everyone, right? Private, public, all sorts of folks working together to really make sure that we're prepared for the future because we know what's coming. We've already experienced it. And, I think it's also really important to recognize that the state, Texas and the federal government through Trump and Abbott are really attacking local governance and stripping us from resources, right? The federal cuts is intentional, and the state targeting Harris County and Travis County and other, counties that have big old metro areas is intentional. And we're dealing with the repercussions of that. And so it's really important that we come together and really focus on what we can have control over, right? Sometimes I know it can feel really overwhelming, but think of it of like what piece of the pie, the bite that you can take. And the bite that you can really take is a local initiative, right? Whether it's the county or city. So I'm really proud of that. And I think that that is a way for us to provide hope. We created the first county-wide climate justice plan, and it's directly rooted here in the South, right? In the energy capital of the world. And we're proud of it.
Yes, and Harris County is what the third most populous county in the U.S. And so if Harris County can do it in Texas, you can do it too. Carmen, do you want to add anything about kind of the role of government, especially since you're in Austin as well?
Yeah, and I also, before I get to government, I do want to just right back at you, Andy and Alice. I have so much respect for West Street and for SEER and for all the organizers out there. And I also want to say that GAVA has not been on the front lines of this most recent flooding tragedy. We've been part of the network trying to move resources, trying to show up. But I want to shout out a couple of incredible people who have inspired me in this. and I talked to somebody, Christina Muhammad, Sister Christina Muhammad of 10,000 Fearless First Responders, which is not a formal nonprofit, but has been on the front lines and is also planning these scavenger hunt games in clear skies in good times, right? Getting neighborhood teams organized. How do you get around with a map and coordinates when you don't have cell phone power? So these are things that you can do actively with your community. And so coming back to your actual question of governance, we're in a tricky situation where not only do we have an extreme pressure from the federal and the state level that is very right wing, we also have, I think Alice alluded to, the sort of libertarian forces, a very, under a capital D Democratic headline, a very deregulatory and real estate influenced local city council. And so it's caused a lot of pressures to pave over areas that are already flood sensitive. It has pushed very high end market rate density that has displaced our communities to more rural areas, to more outskirt areas, and in some cases outside of the municipal utilities where we have more agency to control those things. So that means we just got to get organized. First of all, we're always anti-displacement. We're going to fight for the right of working class people to live in Austin, Texas, and particularly communities of color that have been disproportionately impacted. And we're also organizing in those informal bodies, but also those governmental bodies, those smaller quasi-governmental bodies, the Water Development Board, which is a newer entity that's actually looking at our state flood plan, organizing in counties where there hasn't been much representation of directly impacted people, and changing the game in those spaces where, there's a lot up for the taking. I think a lot of folks are frustrated with where our government has been and they've pulled away. And the flip side of that is there's a lot for the taking. If you look at most Democratic clubs right now, the attrition is real. There are very few people there. There are positions. There are a lot of ambitious people running for office, but let's not just look at elected office. Let's look at the boards and commissions and regulatory agencies and the spaces where we can actually get people in. It's not as fancy. It doesn't sound as sexy maybe on Instagram, but the reality is that's where millions of dollars of decisions around infrastructure, around response are going to happen. And it's also where we're going to see those important intersections on other issues like housing and immigration and enforcement, law enforcement, safety, all of those things that do intersect with our well-being in a climate crisis.
Awesome. Y'all, this conversation has been so, so good. Thank you so much for the wisdom that you have shared. I want to do one last go around. Tell me, how can people support your organization? How can people get involved? Are there any other organizations that you also want to shout out as well, as Carmen mentioned? Alice, you want to kick us off?
Sure. If you're in Houston, Westry Recovery often hosts disaster preparedness trainings and volunteer rebuild days or drainage cleanup days. And so we always post our events on Instagram, and we would love for you to join us. If you feel so inclined, you can donate through our website to help rebuild homes and build power in frontline neighborhoods in Houston. And other than that, definitely give us a follow and sign up for our newsletter. Over.
Andy?
I'll jump in.
Yeah.
Yeah. So similarly, follow us on social media at CEER Houston, CEER. Keeping up with our website. We're about to share a little bit about the incredible pilot program that we've been running around home weatherization services. I think it's something that we can all really learn from. If there's anything you take away from this call, weatherization for all, baby. And stay tuned because we're continuing the Harris County implementation work here locally. We know that we're facing a lot of deficits, and so we have to do a lot of advocacy to make sure that the important services aren't getting cut. So stay tuned and keep posted, and we look forward to your support.
Thumb, I'm gonna treat this like a 90s radio show. A couple more shout outs to others who have been really responding. If y'all follow Hands Off Central Texas, Sophia Murto and them, they have been really covering a lot of this. In addition to what's happening in the legislature, Austin Mutual Aid is an organization that is directly putting people in housing, getting money to people. And of course, Go Austin, Vamos Austin is our organization. You can find us on Instagram at Go Austin Vamos. And we are actually having a screening of a beautiful short film and an activity about how heat affects us in the community at the end of August, August 28th. So follow us if you're in Austin. Check us out. We have an event coming up at Dottywood Studios. It'll be interactive. It'll be stuff for all ages and families and multilingual. So keep in touch. And thank you again so much to the Solutions Project for identifying the on-the-ground organizers who are doing the day-to-day work on this. We really appreciate y'all.
Sending the love back out to y'all, and we hope that everyone who watched this feels a little bit more powerful and ready to take action to protect their communities. And again, follow along hashtag Solidarity Strong and the Solutions Project for more great resources. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye. Solidarity.